players, how are you guys doing? Oh my goodness. I want to welcome you guys to the round table discussion. That's right here on the Analog Circle podcast. Now guys, I have with me a very, very special guest today who's going to tell not only you, the listener, but as well as myself about an upcoming project that he has been very, very hard at work with. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls out there, I want to welcome to the show Mr. Pierre Leclerc. How's it going, brother? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's quite the grand entrance. Thank you.
Hey, I want to tell you, Pierre, thank you really, seriously, so much for wanting to be a special guest on the podcast. Now, before we get into this great project that you're working on, could you just tell us just a little background about yourself? Because I'm always interested in the developer's story first and foremost. So for you, what got you interested into getting into the gaming industry out of curiosity?
Well, I'm 37 by now, so it is somewhat of a long story, but I'll make it short and interesting as much as I can. Okay. I've always been a gamer since I was 4 or 5, Nintendo, all these old school consoles. I got into gaming very early on, and eventually that transferred to wanting to make games, because it was such an exciting world. And I looked at awesome projects out there. At the time, I was a big fan of Square Soft, specifically. They're awesome projects, RPGs. That's the kind of stuff I really like, RPGs. So anyways, all these games really made me want to start programming. So I started getting into programming when I was roughly 15 or something. And, from there it kind of snowballed to me making my own small projects at home and eventually joining, computer science for programming university stuff. And, as it moves, I just joined the gaming industry, and I guess they like my home project, so I got in pretty quickly right after college, and from there started working for a lot of large studios. Also doing my own project on the side back in the day. I had a game called Black Sigil, which got published on the Nintendo DS back in 2009, and so it's the background roughly, like working for large studios, and recently. Now I don't work anymore for large studios. I quit that job and I'm working full time on the Seal, the game that we're about today. Does that cover things pretty well, or a bit too?
That was great. No, that was fantastic, because similar to you, even though you actually took it quite a few steps further than myself, I remember as a kid, people would always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a firefighter? Do you want to be a policeman? Do you want to be a doctor? I said, no, I want to make video games. Ever since about 10 or 11 years old, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. Of course, I tried to pursue it, but it didn't work out. So I said, well, hopefully one day I can at least try to put myself some kind of way into the industry. Not that I am, but I'm just such a fan of people that actually do this for a living. It's just, like I said, it's really an honor and a pleasure to be talking to someone like yourself that has actually been in the industry and actually had a goal in mind and just honed in on it and made it happen. That's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Definitely. Now, the one other thing that I wanted to ask you, just for someone out there that may be trying to get into the industry out of curiosity, was there any particular steps that you took? Like, was there, just some kind of, some kind of roadmap that you followed to actually get into the industry?
So, yeah, I can definitely give you some tips there. My perspective is primarily as a programmer, though, so I don't know if it would cover, for example, artists, designers. These are a slightly different field. But as far as a programmer is concerned, I personally think that the best way to get in the industry is really to show passion, talent, and just, skill to do things on your own. So I think the best is to have a solid portfolio where on your own time, you build a bunch of games and concepts and things, that are like really on your own time. So preferably not even tied to your, school or any of these projects, things you do on your own. And then you own these projects and you have one or two of those. And when you start interviewing for jobs, that's something the video game industry, recruiters really like seeing because it shows, like I said, dedication, talent, an ability to be self-sufficient. And, the gaming industry, like a lot of people, like not just you and me, like a lot of people, it's their dream, especially in programmer side, to go into there because it's exciting. So they can afford to be kind of picky with the resume. So having a solid portfolio is definitely the best way to get in there. When I was working at EA and other big companies, whenever we'd look at resumes, that not just me, the whole team of people looking at things, this is definitely what we were looking at for a good candidate. So that would be my number one tip.
Wow, that's excellent. That's excellent advice, especially coming from a person who worked at EA. Golly, that's something else, man. Something else. So, since we kind of have, some of that out the way, Pierre, I want to get into this project that you're working on. Now, the name of the project is Seal-Arbiters Mark?
Correct.
Oh, please tell me and the listeners about this project.
Yeah, of course. So it's a tactical RPG, turn-based, fairly classic. We're definitely setting off to recreate as much as possible the old school vibe of playing, great classics like Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre. I think that era had some really awesome games. And while there's still, some good tactics games to this day, like, XCOM's a great name out there currently that's popular. Divinity could be considered, tactical as well. But it's not the same style exactly as the old school JRPGs. And we think that style is definitely not been, represented enough. So we're going all out to try to make that experience alive again. But of course, we're bringing in, our own touch, revamp art, better UI, adding a lot of new concepts, hopefully fixing a lot of, some of the points that might have been pain points in a slightly older game, older design like Final Fantasy Tactics. But at the end of the day, that was one of the best games ever created. So it's a tall order, definitely. But that's. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go right ahead. All
right. The other thing I wanted to mention is, just real quick, it's story driven. There's a lot of dialogue and lots of, battles. Of course, it's a tactics game. So we're putting like all the emphasis on story and, gameplay mechanics, especially in combat with, like I said, well written and a lot of dialogues. So that's definitely where the focus is. And that's what we're aiming at presenting to the player.
Hey, I think that's excellent. Just really quickly, that's always the most important draw to me as a gamer is always the story. The story is the thing that keeps me as a game player, and I can only speak for me personally going. I know that the industry is starting to shift into more multiplayer games, which is nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But I just hope that the industry doesn't start to make that its primary purpose, because it seems to a certain extent, and I don't know if you may agree or disagree with this, Pierre, but it seems like the industry is starting to make that shift where, stories are still relevant, I should say, but it seems like for some companies, they feel like in order to get that, to get the money that they need, and I understand that gaming, it is a business at the end of the day. You have to make money in order to stay in business. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. But do you think that the industry is starting to maybe shift into the multiplayer space a little too much, or do you think as a developer it's at a pretty good balance right now?
Well, you cover a lot of points in there. If you're asking me for my personal opinion, I think I agree with you that stories, I mean, not all across the board, but for a lot of games, stories have been somewhat dropping a little bit in quality. I'm thinking, a lot of the classic, JRPGs I played while growing up, stories might have been somewhat simple, but they were very, captivating. They really got to you. And I think nowadays, I don't think as many games really do that. So that's on the one end, I think there's some work that could be done there. On the other end, for multiplayer, I'm not sure I agree with you in the sense that I do think multiplayer is getting big and a lot of companies are trying to put it in, but I think it's not that prevalent in the RPG and tactical space. I mean,
that's
Divinity
true.
2, yeah, like if you take Divinity 2 that just came out, or even, the first one, Divinity Original Sin, that's a game that garners a lot of praise for multiple reasons, but one of them would be their incredible multiplayer features and how unique it is in that space. No one else really offers that for that type of, heavy RPG experience. Things like Pillars of Eternity, etc., don't convey that. So I think it's a bit, a complex situation. I do think story needs to improve, but I don't necessarily think multiplayer is what's eating at that space right now. And we would love to get multiplayer in our game because our team is a team of two, my wife and I. So we love to play these games together specifically. And that's one of the reasons we love the Divinity Original Sin series so much, because it's great to play together. We are hoping to get multiplayer in our title, but it's a stretch goal on the Kickstarter at this point. It's a can of worm at the end of the day to open multiplayer. It's pretty tough. So definitely your next title will have it for sure. But this one, only time will tell. We're hoping for it though. I do think, you can still have a good story and multiplayer at the same time.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Definitely. But wait a second, Pierre. You just, said something that I did not know. So this is a team made up of you and your wife that are working on Fell Seal.
Yes, we're primarily a team of two. She's the artist and the programmer. We do employ a fair amount of contracted artists, just to primarily speed up the work because, there's so much art in there. My wife could do it all, but it would take her probably an extra 2 years or something. So we've been contracting, some of it to a bunch of, very talented people. And also it increases the quality. My wife is awesome, but, she's not an expert at all the art in the world, just, a good amount of it. So, yep.
Hey, I will say this, Pierre. I definitely saw the demo that you guys had up, and man, I would have thought, now this is truthfully speaking, I would have thought that you guys had like a good 50, 60 man team, working on this game, because I do love the art style. It does take you back to that Final Fantasy Tactics-esque era, in gaming. So I really do, enjoy what you guys have done with the project thus far. Now, the other question that I would love to ask you, Pierre, is how did you guys, and you kind of hinted at it, but I guess I'll say the question more formally, how did you guys actually come up with the concept of Fell Seal?
When you say concept, do you mean why did we decide on tactics games or specific concepts within the game? Just want to make sure I answer your question as clearly as possible.
No, you're right. Just how a person may have something in their mind that they're saying, hey, I think I want this to be this way or that way, as far as the concept of something goes. Yeah, just how you guys actually came up with Fell Seal as a whole.
Well, as I hinted at before, as you said, definitely the main goal is we miss games like Final Fantasy Tactics. So we're trying to recreate that experience. So that's definitely like the building block, is to try to get to something that really gets the player in that mood, in that excitement, because we think it's awesome. Then from there, it's not, there's nothing, magical or instant. We have 20 different spreadsheets and design documents and stuff. So it's, crafting the vision and refining it over time. We've been working on this for 2 years. So, the vision started somewhere and it moves and it evolves and we polish it and we fix things. So, it's really, it takes a while. It takes some time. So I can give you like, oh, this was the moment, or this is how it happened. It really got refined over a long period of time.
Gotcha. Now that was actually another thing that I wanted to ask you about was, how long did it actually take to get the project from actually, being this thing that you guys were thinking about doing, coming up with the story and the different characters, to actually making it something that you could see, that you could actually interact with and, see up on the TV screen or the monitor? How long did it actually take for you guys to come up with, the concept? Did it take maybe 6 months to get the ball going, or did it take maybe over a year to actually get everything, actually in motion to where you could demo it and show other people, what you guys' vision actually was?
Well, I think we actually started planning and thinking about the whole concept of, doing our own indie game, a tactical game, about 6 years ago. But that was, prep work, gathering some savings to make sure, we could work on it full time and all that stuff. But 2 years ago is when we definitely, started full time work. My wife and I spent a couple months, preparing, basic story, basic design, and then she started creating some graphics. And then she started working on that like full time immediately. And she's been working for the last 2 years full time on this, so that's how long it took to create all the art assets and all the stuff that you see currently in the demo. On my side, I started working full time only 8 months ago. Before that, I was part time. But that's, you could say about a full year of programming is what's gone into actually create the systems and the tools and the editors that we use to create the whole world.
Wow, that's actually a pretty fast turnaround time. That's pretty awesome, actually.
We've done this before, so we're kind of used to it, and we specifically made design decisions centered especially around programming and tools and the way the maps are generated that we knew would actually translate into a pretty good pace. Like, for example, the maps that we have, old school maps are usually tiled. We decided to go with fully hand-drawn maps, and there's multiple advantages to that. One of the advantages, it looks gorgeous. You have a fully rendered map all by hand, and then, we do a pass to clean it up, and we add some trees and some objects on top of it. So it's not tiled, so that increases quality. And it's much faster to create. The big advantage of tiles is reusability, and especially it saves a lot of memory. But, on modern computers, who cares about that kind of stuff, Like, we have plenty memory in there, way more than we need up to a certain point. So as long as we're being somewhat careful. So these are some of the steps we took to make it a bit faster and, gain quality at the same time. So it's a big win.
Wow, that sounds really, really cool that you guys actually have a nice, expansive world. I mean, it's big. It's some places to travel and go to. You don't have to feel like you're so confined, in a space. That is awesome. That is great. Now I have to tell you this, Pierre. I have to come clean about something, brother. I have not. Now, this might be gaming blasphemy. It might be. But I have not played Final Fantasy Tactics. I have not played it, brother. I know. I might lose some gaming cred for that. I might lose some. But my question to you is this. For a person that's in my situation that hasn't given a game like this, this type of genre of game a chance, that may look at it and be curious, because of the art style and how it looks, what would you say to that person to convince them to give this game a shot, to give it a chance?
That's a good question. I guess I've not actually thought of it in these terms before, but things I could mention is,
sure.
I mean, if you're an RPG fan, like at its core, a tactical RPG is, it's an RPG. There's a lot of character development, a lot of story. There's a tale being told, being woven with big, fantastic events happening. So if you like RPGs, chances are that, a tactics RPG could definitely be your thing. It's a bit slower pace in the sense that it's turn-based and it's very tactical. So every battle takes a little bit extra time. So if you're a very actiony, twitchy type of person, actually, to be honest, it might not be your crowd. It might be fun to test it anyways, but it might not be for you. That being said, if you like careful play of any kind and love story and good dialogues, that's definitely something that could be right up your alley, I think. Plus, if you like pixel art and, hand-drawn maps and good-looking stuff, you might like it too.
I can respect that. I honestly can respect that because, like I said, a game, it might not be, because I'll tell you this, Pierre, Final Fantasy VII, when that game came out, I was not an RPG fan at all. I didn't, actually like the turn-based system, but I'm going to get to the point though. The thing that actually made me go to, it wasn't even GameStop at that time. I think it was Funko World or something like that we had here in the States. It was the cutscenes. I had seen the cutscenes on TV and I said, oh my gosh, I have to get this game. So that was the draw in. But once I got the game, and I started to play it, and the story started unfolding, and characters started dying. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. It was just totally amazing. The story really, really drove me to get through that game. Plus, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with it. Fun factor and story, they can really turn a person around, when it comes to a game. I mean, well, I can only speak for me, but it definitely turned me around. So I do appreciate the fact that you guys are, you guys have a story there. You have character development there. That's very important. So for someone out there that may just want to really see a great story unfold, they should jump into Fell Seal, right, Pierre?
I certainly think so, if I do say so myself.
Definitely. Now, I do want to take this time also, Pierre, to congratulate you actually on being available. The game actually, being available on Xbox at some point. It'll be available on the Xbox. Now, I was just curious to know, Pierre, how was that process actually working with Microsoft to actually get a game on their platform? Was it a difficult situation? Did you have to come to them with a certain plan of action? Just how was that whole situation, just getting onto a Microsoft product?
So while I've worked in the gaming industry for a long time, and on console specifically, I've never had before this time to deal directly with, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, the big boys, if you will. And we were incredibly pleasantly surprised by how easy it was to work with Microsoft. They're very responsive, very professional. They're generous. Like we got some dev kits to work on that product, on Fell Seal, for free. So like
wow.
they liked our project, and they, like I said, they were extremely professional and quick about it. It all fell through very smoothly. It was, it panned out very quickly. It was very easy and smooth experience. I was very happy with them. Still am. They're awesome.
Wow, now that is amazing to me, because I don't know, Pierre, if you agree or disagree. And trust me, if you don't want to answer, I fully understand. But it seems like to me, in my personal opinion, Microsoft, they seem to get a bad rep out there, bad reputation, like they're difficult to work with. You have to have, this criteria. And I understand every company has a certain criteria that you have to follow. I understand that. But listening to some people's stories, they made it sound like Microsoft was, very hard, almost impossible, to work with. But I'm just saying all of this to say it's refreshing to hear someone who is an independent developer actually say something positive about Microsoft for a change, instead of, tearing them down and giving them a hard time. So that's just great news to hear. That's awesome.
Well, for what it's worth, again, like I said, I did not deal with them directly, but I've worked in the industry for a long time, and I've not personally heard in the industry the talk you mentioned, in the sense that I do not believe Microsoft is harder to work with as far as studios are concerned than Sony or Nintendo. I actually think they're easier to work with in general than the other two.
Wow.
But that's, like I said, I personally didn't handle that part of the business, if you will. But that's what I've heard.
Definitely. That's more than fair, Pierre. More than fair. Now, out of curiosity, I did want to ask you this as well, pertaining to the game. What engine are you using, and how did you come up with the art style? Is there like a particular engine you're using for the game?
So we're using Unity.
Okay, gotcha.
And sorry, were you asking how we decided on Unity?
Yes.
So I've worked with Unity at previous jobs in the past, and when we started the project full swing, Unity had very recently released their 2D package. Like before that, the 2D in Unity was very primitive. But when they released their new sprite system, it suddenly became like very flexible and, quite solid. So, since I already knew Unity and, it was available and all, we just jumped on it right away and started getting ready pretty quick. Unity's pretty easy to get into. I'll be honest, we didn't necessarily explore a large array of possibilities for the engine. Other engines might have been just as good as Unity, but I knew also Unity would offer cross-platform, such as Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, which was a big boon, because we were aiming from that from the get-go. So it had all these advantages that seemed good, and to be honest, like most programmers will probably tell you that up to a certain point, it's all the same to them. One engine or another, they'll make it do what they want, and some have like pros and cons in different areas. It all varies a little bit, but we're happy with Unity, and the cross-platform so far is looking really good. We exported a few weeks ago our first Mac and Linux builds, and everything worked flawlessly. We had them tested by the Linux and Mac community with very good results. We're very happy.
Wow, that's great. That is excellent news. It's fantastic. Now, I have to also ask you this, Pierre. Now, I know this is an RPG, so could you possibly tell me as well as the listeners about the class system that the game has?
Sure. So first, there's about 20 basic class. And then we have, at this point, but we're still expanding, we have 6 secret classes that you need a specific, they're more difficult to unlock, and you'll need secret items or, different conditions must be met. So the class system, you've not played Final Fantasy Tactics, so you're a good audience to explain it properly to. But it's fairly reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics, meaning that, you have this class that you can use on your characters, and you can freely switch classes, meaning that you're not locked on a fixed progression. You can change, your warrior can become a mage if you want to, or all these things, as long as you've met the prerequisites to open a class. So, for example, you start as a mercenary. Once you've learned enough mercenary abilities, it will open up the knight and the rogue. Yes, classes. So once you've opened some of those classes, say you've learned a couple abilities on the knight, it will open another class, and that way you can eventually know all the classes, although there's a lot of them. Wow. And that's how you basically select them. And then on top of having a class, you can have access to a subclass as well, which is basically, while in combat, you have access to all the abilities that you've currently learned for your main class, and all the abilities that you've learned for your subclass. And you can equip your subclass freely from any of the class which basically creates a very versatile character. You can have like a knight with some healing magics, or some, even attack magic on the side just for extra range, or for, taking advantage of enemy weaknesses with elements, etc. And there's a lot more to it. There's like passive abilities, counter abilities, and all this stuff is configurable in your character. Every character you have can be very unique. You can craft them exactly to do like whatever you want, and it can be very what's the term? Anyways, someone that's very versatile. Sorry.
Right. No, French, you're fine. You're fine. No, you're great. You're great.
So anyways, you can create very, specialist type of people, very versatile. You can do whatever you want. It's very flexible.
It sounds, you know what that sounds like to me, Pierre? It sounds like a lot of great hours of gameplay. It sounds like it would be a lot, because sometimes games, eventually you run out of things to do. The way that you guys have this set up, it really does seem like you can get a lot of hours and a lot of options out of this game, which is what everybody wants at the end of the day.
I think so. We're planning at least 25, 35 hours main campaign, and we're very serious about putting a large amount of end game content in there, and extra quests and stuff for people that, as you said, just like more content and to keep going. I mean, there's definitely a crowd of player that after 25, 30 hours, that's enough. They're ready to move to something on, even if they really enjoyed the game. But there's a lot of players that, they can go 100 hours and they just want more content. Mm-hmm. So we're planning some very, tough encounters and such for the end game. So it really pushes your ability to create your units and configure them and, customize them to meet crazy challenges head on. So it should be very fun and exciting.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it's going to be a great time. Now, I just want to know your personal opinion. I'm sure this is going to be a hard question to answer, but in your opinion, because I know you must love them all, but in your opinion, who would you say is your favorite character and why?
When you say character, you're talking about the story characters, or you're talking about okay.
Yes.
Sorry. So,
that was fine.
Well, I think our main protagonist, would be my favorite. She's like this grizzled, warrior that's very, very tough, but she's got a playful, witty humor. And personal opinion is that I like it, because she's very uncompromising, especially with, matters pertaining to justice and what's right and what's wrong. And she can be a little drastic, and I mean, at the end of the day, most of these games, right, people are fairly drastic, but it's kind of glossed over in the sense that, you have a battle map with a bunch of people. At the end of that battle map, everyone on the other side is dead, right? Right. No one's really mentioning that aspect because, you kind of gloss over it, but being dead is a big deal. It's something, very final, right?
Yes.
So, or character, like her job is basically dispensing justice up to a certain point. She's an arbiter, which you could say is the equivalent of like an executioner, a police officer, and a judge, all packed into one. Like she can dispense law as she sees fit. She's basically allowed to do so by the ruling immortal councils, and being immortals, they de facto kind of do their thing. So and she is not afraid to just dispatch evildoers that are not that are being aggressive with you. So I don't know, it's a personal opinion, but I like the fact that she's tough, and it leads you into these more mature topics. We're not we're not trying to make a point or bring anything to too serious or political conclusion or anything, but there's some serious topics, mature subjects, and I think they're handled in a fairly uncompromising way, and I think it's interesting, and that character really plays to these concepts, I think.
That sounds great. Hey, wow, I think that's a great way to wrap it up, Pierre. My goodness. Now, before we do wrap it up, though, two things I want to ask you. Where can people actually go see this great demo that you actually showed me if they are curious about this game, that you have their interest? Where can they go to actually see it in action?
So best spots is probably one of the three big sites we're on. So that would be GameJolt, itch.io, and Indie Expo. There's a bunch of links there. I'm assuming you can post the links next to the link of the podcast itself, rather than me trying to say them here. So yeah, this would be the good spot. Well, as a quick plug tied to that, our Kickstarter is currently running, and you could all the demos are linked on the Kickstarter as well, so you could find them that way fairly easily, like Linux, Mac, and Windows versions, on top of videos and a lot of other stuff, of course.
Yeah, you actually answered my second question. I was going to ask you about
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Hey, you're great. You're great, Pierre. I guess before we wrap it up, though, is there any final words that you would want to say to the listeners about this great game that's coming out soon? Like, do you know when that's what I wanted to ask you as well before we wrap up. Do you know when we could possibly be expecting this to release? Is there a window, or is that still kind of, in the making?
Right. So we have a couple important dates planned at this point. So release, we're hoping Q3 of 2018. So within that window should be a good time. For people on the Kickstarter that go with the beta version, so where they get the game earlier, they have the beta access, which is the build we're working on every day and adding and tweaking. That's a good way for people to give feedback and help us refine the whole process. We're hoping to get that build out as early as possible, which should be around coming December is when that should become available.
Oh, wow.
We're thinking of an early access on Steam as well, where it won't be the full release of the game, of course, but we'll have a couple of chapters and, otherwise fully functional things. We're thinking of, I believe, March of 2018 for that build as well. If people are interested in any of these options. Definitely the beta build, though, should be interesting because we have a Discord server as well. And the fans will be able to give us, direct feedback, balancing feedback, like all that good stuff, so we can make sure the game is as awesome as it can be.
That sounds excellent, Pierre. Wow. Pierre, I want to once again take this time again to truly, truly thank you for being a guest on the show. You have been excellent, and I'm very excited about this project, and I want to just congratulate you and your wife for having the courage to come out here and actually make your own game. Not too many people can say that. That is very commendable.
Thank you very much. It was awesome being on the show with you. You're very enthusiastic and passionate, so it's really great to have a chance to talk with you and the listeners.
Hey, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, listeners, we are going to wrap it up, but we will be back later on this week. But until then, you guys take care. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.